Let's talk about some international developments. Millions of Germans will head to the polls in a federal election on Sunday. This will determine who will succeed Angela Merkel after 16 years as Germany's chancellor. Merkel's former advisor Joachim Koschniche says as the end of her term approaches, a turning point for national strategies and policies is expected from the new government. Only days before Germans cast their ballots to elect a new parliament, Merkel campaigned in Munich for her union parties, the Christian Democratic Union and the Christian Social Union. Meanwhile, CDU leader Armin Laschet said if he gets elected, he will work closely with Markus Söder, leader of the CSU, to co-govern the country. Let's speak now to our correspondent who is in Berlin, Trent Murray. Trent, a very good evening to you. So tell us what's going to be happening tomorrow. Whom are people voting for? And I believe voting by mail has already started.
Yeah, well, the sun might be setting here in Berlin, but it's also setting on Angela Merkel's long term in office. As you said there in your introduction, 16 years she has led Germany. It's been a very long tenure. She's worked with 4 South African presidents during her time, but at 67 years old, she has decided it is time to retire. That has left a fresh field of names now hoping to replace her. We are really in the final hours of this campaign now, with polls opening tomorrow morning. And so we've seen those 3 real top candidates crisscrossing across Germany, trying to galvanise support from their core voter base. Latest polling shows it will be a close race between Olaf Scholz from the centre-left Social Democrats and Angela Merkel's own successor from the conservative CDU. There really is only 2 or 3 points now between them. So all eyes are on both of those campaigns to see if they can try and pull something out of the hat right at this last minute in order to drag it over the line.
And I believe, Trent, that the German Chancellor has backed her centre-right party's candidate, Armin Laschet, to succeed her. It's a tight poll. Does that mean that, there is tight competition as well for the poll?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Angela Merkel for quite a long time had wanted to stay out of this election. She has run 4 campaigns herself, and after 16 years in office, she felt it was kind of her duty to let the next generation run their own race. But Armin Laschet, her successor, really has faced some pretty difficult headwinds this election. His personal approval ratings are very low, and he has really dragged his party down in the polls. And that is why, seemingly out of nowhere, the centre-left has been able to catch up and take the #1 spot, which has really surprised many people here, because for a long time they have languished in the polls here in Germany. For years they were struggled to get even close to 15%. So it really is a meteoric rise for Olaf Scholz and the centre-left. Against that backdrop, Angela Merkel very much, I suppose you could say, drafted from the bench. Her party essentially coming to her saying, we are desperate, we need your star power on the campaign trail. And so we have seen her in recent days kind of begrudgingly re-enter the fray to try and help Armin Laschet from the CDU. Whether it's enough, though, is the real question, because, as I say, he has been struggling now for quite a few months. If he does manage to turn it around and come out on top spot, that would be a real surprise, and I think a real signal of just how popular Angela Merkel still is in helping him be able to get there right at this final hurdle.
And Trent, then there's the finance minister Olaf Scholz and his SPD party, along with Annalena Baerbock from the Green Party. What are their chances? Is it 3rd and 4th respectively on the tally points?
Yeah, Annalena Baerbock and the Green Party very much the 3rd contender in this race. They, at one point earlier in the campaign this year, were at the #1 spot, which was incredible for them, given that at the last election they only achieved 8% as a national vote share. They are on course to double that now, according to the latest polling. even if she doesn't win, she is in a very strong position to possibly play kingmaker, if you will, in coalition negotiations. The way system works here in Parliament, it is very unlikely, because of German politics, that any one party will win an outright majority. In fact, it's nearly impossible. So the real name of the game after the voters cast their vote is trying to put the building blocks together of forming a coalition that can reach 50%. For Olaf Scholz to get there from the centre-left, he will need Annalena Baerbock and the Greens on side. The two of them probably won't get there on their own, so there are 3 or 4 other smaller parties, including a socialist party as well as a Liberal Democrat party. They will probably achieve around 10%. Not much, but it could be key to helping the two bigger parties reach that 50% on the floor of Parliament behind me.
And let's talk about that Parliament. Why does the size of the Bundestag vary, and how does Germans getting 2 votes influence that?
Yeah, I mean, well, the Bundestag building behind me is really the centre of German politics. It's here where MPs from across the country come and sit and hold government. Importantly, it's not where the Chancellor works. A little bit further along the river here, you will find the Chancellery building. That is, in effect, the White House, I suppose you could call it, of German politics. And it's there that the Chancellor manages the country's affairs in cooperation with the Parliament. But the way a Chancellor is selected is by a majority of MPs in the Parliament voting. So that is why it could be some time before we know who the next Chancellor is. I don't think, according to the latest polls, we will get a very clear result tomorrow night when those ballots come in. It could be some time with a lot of backroom meetings, different parties talking to one another, horse trading certain ministries, trying to get, as I say, to that majority. And of course, while all of that happens, Angela Merkel will remain as essentially the caretaker chancellor until a successor is chosen by a majority. So yes, she is retiring after 16 years, but she isn't quite leaving for her retirement cottage quite yet. She will be around, I suspect, for a little bit longer.
Thanks for that, Trent. Our correspondent out there in Berlin, Trent Murray.